Hey, welcome to The Process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is weeks 1 to 3 Snap Data Charts, part 1. This is me looking at some of my data that I use for lineups, trades, waiver wires, pickup decisions, etc. Daily fantasy sports. I play a little, not a lot. Just gives you an insight using my process, the way I do things. So let me start. I had introduced last time this aspect of the research that occurred to me, and I was looking at player snaps of a team, average player snaps. Here we go. Average scoring per snap, PPR. Numbers of players on teams and yards per game. And I seem to have found some interaction between teams that had high average player snaps and teams that were lower in player snaps as far as the yards per game that these teams were producing. So there seemed to be some association. I do not know what it is. I don't claim to know. I'm just presenting the data for you to know it's out there. And so the top teams are in green: New England, Philadelphia, Rams, Indy, Minnesota, Baltimore, Detroit, Cleveland. So those are in the top part of the league. The bottom are Tennessee, the Giants, Kansas City. Isn't that interesting? Denver, Green Bay, Chicago, the Raiders, and the Jets. A lot of those bottom teams haven't been doing well except for Kansas City. So Kansas City just jumps out as like, wow, how are they doing so much with, in some ways, so little? So that's some intriguing information there. In fact, if you look, they're the only team that is in the top 25% of the league in yards per game. So there's really something very different about Kansas City's offense, folks, if you look at it from these perspectives. So when you use this sorting mechanism and take the top 16 teams, so these plus somewhere down in here, and then we compare the bottom 16 teams as far as just yards per game. So I use the average snaps as a way to cut the cake in half, and this is what you end up with. In the top average player snaps teams, the yards per game are there, and then the bottom teams, there's their yards per game. And if you get an average of the averages, you see in the top half of teams that are spitting out high player snaps as a team, 360 yards per game. The bottom, 301. So if you look at a box and whisker, that shows you the distribution of these. So it's really interesting that we're seeing a clear difference. I haven't done the stats because, I think we need more data still. I could do the stats. This is suspicious that something is going on, and I've got to hope for something, but hey, sometimes I don't know what I found. I just make note for you to think about that. That maybe the top teams have players that are producing yards per game better than the bottom teams as groups. You know, there's always an exception. Look at Kansas City. I just talked about that. Just wanted to continue. I'm going to follow this for a while throughout the season, and we'll see what happens. Okay, and then I've got ideas to get deeper still. But I think part of the reason the few of you are listening to me is because I'm doing things differently. This is my process. And it might give us some edges. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but there's the data. Okay. Changing the subject for this video. So from team level, let's go to positional level by teams. And in this case, I'm looking at the scoring. And remember, the scoring is touchdown dependent. A lot of this metrics is. So this does skew it that way, but I still like to kind of know where the teams are getting their points from, just kind of as a group. And of course, more data, the more likely we'll start seeing things. We'll start seeing changes if there are player injuries or new quarterbacks or coaches are fired or whatever that can occur during the season. And I'll just briefly go through that. So we see the team, the position, quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver. And the metrics there are average PPR points per snap. So scoring per snap, week 1, 2, and 3. And I colorized the highs and lows. You could, it's pretty apparent. So there are things that come to me. Arizona, you get the feeling like they're not using their tight ends as much as they could. They're not scoring. Week 2 was all about the running backs. The quarterback. Week 3 was quarterback, running back, and wide receivers. So Arizona saw an uptick in the wide receiver scoring last week. I don't know if they'll repeat, but you can watch that. Look at the first week. It was extreme sadness. Okay. And at time, and probably off season, I will look at defenses played each week, and we can then add that onto this data here. Atlanta had a little bit of activity on the tight ends, kind of weak. Running backs, nothing's really happening for the running backs last 2 weeks, and wide receivers and the quarterback. It was just a sad time in Atlanta. They may have an okay defense, but they're just not scoring. Baltimore, they have a scoring quarterback. I believe I see this data, but the wide receivers are not collecting. Even Andrews is not getting, and the running backs are not, getting what they need. So it's kind of a one-dimensional team. That's sad. Buffalo has been doing pretty good with running backs, but doing okay with wide receivers. Tight ends have not been scoring. And Josh Allen hadn't been running as many ends, so that's been some sadness there. So if you drafted, Kincaid, the tight end, it's going to be a long season. They always get these rookie tight ends, and every year I hear, well, they're different. Whew. It's hard to see the difference here. Rookie tight ends tend to take a while to round into form. Okay. Carolina really had a nice uptick last week with Andy Dalton. And the wide receivers became a thing. Thielen became a thing. So Andy Dalton made that team better, at least on this metric. Running backs actually went down so that the wide receivers could collect a little bit. With the sad quarterbacks, it was all about the running backs. So you should know if they get their, is it Bryce Young? Is that who? If they get rid of Dalton, you have to wonder, does the wide receivers go back down and the running backs, Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, go back? In other words, is that the pattern of the rookie quarterback? That's sad. Chicago, Fields scores. That's about it. Pretty sad. Last week was sadness. A little bit of blips on the running backs week one. That dropped. Not sure what we got there. Poor Cole Kmet not scoring. That's sad. The wide receivers really not scoring a lot. Cincinnati wide receivers week 3 all about it. Week 2 was really good. And week 1 was extra sad. So not sure what game we're going to get from Burrow. People say that injury, maybe didn't slow him down. The metrics are suggestive maybe it is affecting that a little bit. Cleveland's all about the running backs. That's it. That's about the show in Cleveland. Dallas, glad they got running backs. Okay, Denver, pretty sad. The quarterback got a little bit. The wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs, extra sad. So a lot of variation in what's happening. Detroit, sadness as well, scoring-wise. The quarterback did okay, but, we want week 2. Tight end for Laporta, he's got a long way to go too. Green Bay, another quarterback scoring only kind of situation. Jones was out those 2 weeks, and look at the running backs. If Jones comes back, do we see this pattern? Be curious to see what happens tonight. Houston, wow, Houston poured it on week 3. They were all about that goodness, but the running backs are still struggling to score. But the wide receivers are doing it, and the tight end came in. Blevins came in, not Schultz, so that's a surprise quarterback. So Stroud may be picking this up. Week 2, nice. Week 3, moving. Indy, week 3, looks like the running backs were the main show there. Jacksonville, all about the running back scoring. Kind of balanced sadness on the other ones. Kansas City, all about McKinnon and those running backs. Wow, look at that. Kelsey, no, got a touchdown. Nothing. Again, this is not player specific. This is group specific. Chargers, love those wide receivers. Herbert, boy, they need Eckler back. Look at that. Sadness. Tight ends, a little bit. Could be a lot better. Rams, kind of low balance. Quarterback did pretty good, but the running backs were extra sad last week 3 there. Raiders, all about the passing and the quarterbacks there. Miami, what can I say about those RBs? Look at almost a point per snap. That's crazy. Okay, that's just crazy. Forget your tight ends. Tyreek and the rest of them, So really very intriguing how Miami was scoring. I don't know if we'll ever see this kind of pattern again. Look at that. Minnesota, running backs get the blips and the quarterback. Wide receivers could be doing better. Tight end could be doing better. Hockenson. New England, running backs and their tight ends are carrying the day here, at least week 3. But week 2, boy, that was a sad week. Look at that. New Orleans, all about the tight end scoring and the quarterback. I mean, they've got great wide receivers and just didn't put it. Jameis could not put it all together, so I don't know what we get this week. The Giants, their running back, they need Saquon back, but not too bad. Almost half a point per snap for the running backs. Could live with that. Let's see what else. The Jets, out those running backs, of anybody scoring. Philly looks like the running backs and quarterbacks. Pittsburgh, quarterback scored. Seattle running backs all day long. And you're thinking, wow, they got some good folks here. Washington was just extra sad. Not much happening. Tennessee, nothing really happening. Tampa Bay was sadness. San Francisco, all about CMC there. And, that's coming through for them. A lot of other variation occurring there. So you can study these. I'll have the static images up on the Science of Fantasy Football website. And I probably should colorize based on positional production versus just kind of per team there. Because, this data doesn't show you really what is, kind of an average wide receiver kind of play, or above average or below average. So that could be better. Okay, so I will leave you with that. I think it just kind of warms you up a little bit. To me, this data is more about what's not working right now than really what is working. So I don't think I would bench studs based on this, but I think in looking for waiver wire depth or trade depth or maybe daily fantasy, there may be some tricks here. And again, I don't know the defense of the weeks for the teams, but there it is. You can check that out and, overlay that data on top of this. Okay, thanks for listening. I'll get part 2 coming up as soon as I can up there. Woo, we're having fun.